In this series of interviews, we're trying to get to the very heart of what makes a great customer service. Is it people? Is it technology? Or is it a mixture of both? This is the High Street Reloaded with Dr. Mark. I'm Dr. Mark, this is the High Street Reloaded. My guest today is Stephen TG from Integrated Retail Limited. Well, welcome, Steve. I think it was Jessie J that said, forget about the price tag. But in modern retail, that's really not an option, is it? When we talk about price tags, tickets, retail, shelf edge, whatever you want to call it, that information, I mean, it's pretty critical to the retail environment, isn't it?
I think it's the most critical. One way I can illustrate that is that there was a client of ours who rebranded their whole store. They had a concept store, and everything other than the shelf edge ticket was rebranded. New look, new colours, new fonts, and as is normal, they invited in a number of customers to come have a look at the branding, give their impression, and people went up to them with pieces of paper and said, "So what do you think of our new brand?" And they were very proud of it. They'd spent a considerable amount of money in designing
these things can be expensive.
And the most common reply they had from their customers was, "What branding? Wow. We just look at the shelf edge."
So they to be clear, they'd done everything, but they hadn't changed the tickets, and that's incredible, isn't it?
And there are many stories from various different retailers confirming exactly that.
Okay.
I think retailers are now in a position to understand that that is their most vital part of their retail estate when communicating with their client.
Okay, interesting. I mean, I guess it makes sense because we've all been there, haven't we? It's the thing we notice. If we're in a store, if I'm standing in front of the shelf and I see a product and the ticket doesn't, the information that I'm receiving is somehow disjointed, it doesn't match up, immediately my hackles are raised. I mean, my first instinct is this is wrong. I back away from a purchase. Now, that's one thing if you're in a supermarket and you're buying a tin of beans, but that's a whole other thing if you've got some sort of high, much more high-priced item in a retail store.
Well, your purchase decision when it comes to a high-priced item is probably more vital to you as a customer. I imagine myself going in there, it's something I've done quite frequently. I go in to buy a new laptop. I'm a graphic designer and a technologist. And from my experience of doing so, looking at the tickets, a lot of the time my own tickets, it allows me to stand back from a shelf of products and make very clear decisions on which of those products are within my criteria.
Okay.
Yeah? I know I need a certain chip. I know I need it to be new technology. I know it needs to have this amount of RAM. If a ticket is well designed and the information is relevant at shelf edge, I can stand back and I know that 3, 5, 7 and 9 are my decisions. And then from those I can pick whichever one I want. Is one in sale or is one new technology? And whichever my incentive is for buying, I use that. So I can narrow my decision down, and by doing so, hopefully make the best purchase decision I can.
Okay. What I'm going to do at this point is I'm just going to take it back. I was very keen to start with the customer, the person in the shop and the experience that they have. I'm very passionate about a good customer experience, but what we've been doing is sort of going back and back and back. So we're here with the customer, we're there with the information that's on the shelf edge, and then we're going to go back to how that information actually gets on that shelf edge. We've established how important the shelf ticket is, that sort of the information that's on the shelf, how that supports the sales assistants and the salespeople in the stores. Do you want to just talk a little bit about how that information gets to the customer in the store? Because I know you like to talk about channels, and I guess most people in retail, when they hear channels, we're talking about whether it's through the web or whether it's through the store or whatever. But in this instance, it's a little bit more technical. So do you want to just take us through how? Let's imagine the scenario where we have got a situation where a pricing discrepancy has arisen. There's an error on the ticket, and there's a difference between the two. and we know that that has real and sometimes quite significant financial and reputational issues. So how's that information getting to the shelf edge?
Traditionally, you would have a ticket system that would deliver a ticket. Now, there are two possibilities for there being a wrong price at shelf edge. And a wrong price means it is different at shelf edge to what it is on the till. That is really the issue.
Yeah. In other words, when the customer comes to till, there's a problem.
Yeah. I want to buy this for this price, and the salesman says to you, or the salesperson says to you, I'm sorry, it's 20 quid more.
Yeah.
It's not a great customer experience.
No, and I think it's uncomfortable, and it has implications as we've been talking about trust, and that's something that I'm very passionate about. But carry on with the
As I say, there's two problems. The first is pretty easily fixed, which is I haven't put out the new ticket, or somebody hasn't put out the new ticket, and this is a matter of reprinting that ticket and putting it out, because by now we assume that they know that there's a problem.
Okay, and I guess you might put that in with it's a merchandising issue.
It's a merchandising issue. The second, slightly more complicated one, is where the price is wrong on the back-end system. So it requires there to be a report system back to HQ, and HQ to fix that problem in the next price download. So that could potentially be 24 hours for certain retailers. For other retailers, possibly days, because it might be that that retailer has their tickets printed externally. Cut, collate, print, deliver by van. So in order to remedy that, they have to accommodate that price difference for the period of some days.
Okay.
That's huge cost.
And I think, am I right in thinking that back of all of this, that there sits some sort of repository of information? Now, is that information being used to come to, say, a website or some POS in the store, or coming to the till? Because presumably that's, or can there be? How does it work in traditional retail at the moment? I mean, in terms of, I would say the majority of retailers. How does all of that information get to is it all coming from a central point? Is I guess what I'm trying to ask.
It would, in an ideal world, yes, it would. I suppose the best way to emphasise this is to take a product and say, okay, I have a product that I need to get the price of that product into store.
Okay.
I'm a traditional retailer, and my stores are supplied with big posters, which are externally printed, tickets, which are maybe printed next day in store. So somebody goes and presses a button and my tickets come out, and I put my tickets out, simple as that. I may have digital stores where I have signage and I have ESLs. So as a traditional retailer, I would maintain 4 relationships with 4 suppliers down each of those channels. Okay. The raw ingredients delivered to those suppliers would be the same. It would be the same product image, albeit for print it would be a larger, higher quality image. Product information invariably is the same or very similar. The pricing, of course, will be the same, and the message and product information and the deal that goes along with that would also be the same. So what you're trying to get to is one version of the truth, but your challenge is that you have 4 separate containers resulting in 4 separate outputs. Mm. So there's two challenges. One is that the information that you pass through to your suppliers will be hopefully exactly the same, but one supplier would be a traditional design studio, another supplier would be an ESL provider, another supplier would be a signage provider, and they in turn will create the content that goes to that endpoint independent of each other. Yeah. Two issues there. One issue is that any of them can get it wrong, and therefore it's wrong at end point.
Multiple points of failure, almost.
Absolutely. The second issue is that you don't really get the same look and feel at each point as you would if it were one single system. Yeah. So let's think of it in terms of building a Mini.
Okay.
That
works for me. I live near Oxford, so the mini analogy works for me. So yeah, we're producing cars, but yeah.
We're producing cars, and we want to produce 4 Minis, each different spec and different colours. Okay. I would have to maintain, but the key point is we want to produce all 4 Minis to come out at the same time,
Right.
not one after the other, but at the same time. So the only way to do that really is to have 4 channels, one for each colour and spec, and start the process and end the process at the same time.
Right.
So you can't pop one out and then pop another one, pop another one out. So you're maintaining 4 channels to all intents and purposes to get the same or very similar message out, appropriate for that technology.
I'm keen to talk now about your own product, Integrated Retail, which is a product called IREX-M3. Now, my understanding is that what IREX-M3 does is to somehow, almost like if we're looking at those separate production lines or those separate channels, it collapses those channels down. So in other words, you've got this. To use the car analogy again, and I think most car manufacturers now do exactly that. They take the raw ingredients. The vast majority of the vehicle is the same, but there's lots of different customizations, and they can do that by essentially changing at the last minute or whatever. But with your own product, is this? You know better than I do. So tell me a little bit about what IREX-M3 is and what it does.
Let's use the Mini analogy again, seeing as
we're very comfortable with it now. We're very comfortable with it now. So.
It isn't exactly the same, but it is the equivalent of, as you say, pulling all those into a single channel.
Okay.
The consequences are that you feed in here, and you get out at the same time 4 Minis, all various colours and specs, at the same time. If you think of it, and if we extend this analogy, if you have 4 separate production lines, you are paying for 4 separate production lines to be running concurrently. Whereas with M3, you are paying for a single production line, you're maintaining a single production line, you are supporting a single production line, and the ability to deliver the one version of the truth is far easier to manage, both up channel and, if there's a mistake, down channel and a refix.
Interesting. So in other words, again, to go back to the customer and what the customer experience is, we already discussed a little bit about what happens. You've got the ability, if you like, to make a check, to fix a problem. Mm-hmm. But that information sort of flows up through the channel, and what you're saying now is that there's a sort of a return. You can pass feedback back down. Now that I would say that gets you into a much more exciting area of sort of reactive pricing. The ability to react to changing circumstances, which in the modern retail age is very, very important, where companies often have to react to other companies' sort of pricing promotions and things like that. So take us through a little bit of that.
I suppose here again, if you were a retailer and you had a product and you were in direct competition with another retailer, and you intended to drop your price in competition, the ability to be able to deliver that price across all channels instantly from one single point makes you so competitive, as you can imagine. It makes you so competitive. It also means that from your client's perspective, your customer's perspective, I should say, they will, over a period of time, trust the price they see down each of those channels. It'll get to the point where if you are multi-channel, or yet you have a single price at each point, they won't need to go and check the website, because they will know wherever they see that price, it is the price.
And I think it's important to me that does sound pretty exciting, because in a way there's a certain approach, if you like, or there's a certain behaviour of customers where, you know, everybody likes to think they can game the system to some extent. You know, they kind of have an inside track, or, you know, okay, well it's that price in store, but I can go and dig around maybe a little bit online and find it cheaper, and show that it's cheaper even within the same, you know, within the same retailer. And the nice thing about this issue of trust, which I keep coming back to, I think one of the reasons why I know, for example, recently with Tesco, one of the criticisms of Tesco is that they could just confuse their own customers, because there were so many different offers and they were changing, and they were different online and offline, and it wasn't coherent. And I think coherence, more than consistency actually, having some sort of logic which seems to be fair, must help to build trust. So that could be what we've talked about, someone seeing a ticket on a shelf and it being wrong, and obviously wrong from what's seen. That obviously has implications. But across, in terms of someone's relationship with a retailer going forward, they know that they can trust what they're saying. You use the term the truth, and they know that they're getting the truth. That if there is a mistake, it's an honest mistake. It's not some part of some kind of clever, you know, we don't want to be tricked. So that I mean, this does sound, you know, this does sound very desirable. Okay, so, and obviously you're going to say this is, of course, Mark, it sounds incredibly desirable, and all companies should have it. So if I was a CEO, or if I was someone who had responsibility for ensuring compliance, if you use that word, across prices, what are the benefits of putting a system like this in? I mean, what kind of, can we talk about the benefits of the system with a view to looking at returns?
I suppose the simple benefit is that you're not maintaining 5 production lines.
Yeah, and I can see a very quick
saving there. Each of those production lines are in a business because they in turn deliver an ROI. Yeah, the reason people have signage, and the reason people wish to deliver pricing to signage, is because they have already looked at that ROI, and that ROI is justified despite the fact that they are maintaining their channel and all the cost and effort it goes to maintain their channel. And that is the same for ESLs, for print and signage, for print and shelf edge.
Right.
Okay. Now, if those, and we know they are all used in retailers, if each of those stands alone and is justified as ROI, if you if you pull those together into a single supportable system, that multiplies those ROIs to the point where we would hope to deliver an ROI in 6 months.
Wow, that's quite. I mean, in this day and age of software solutions, I mean that's quite a strong timeline to define. But that presumably comes from a confidence that of just how more effective something like this is than just all the other cost elements and the implications of getting things wrong.
It's four cost points down to 1 cost point.
Right.
It is the compliance issue that we've spoken of, which is almost an intangible, of how much money do I as a retailer have to spend on markdowns. It is the ability to custom fit to store level your messaging and pricing such that your clearance message in store is relevant to the stock that you have in store, not some generic clearance message that comes from HQ where a third of what you're showing you don't even have in stock.
Right.
So it is driven by, it makes you much more efficient in delivering clearance and also in delivering messaging against the stock that you actually have in store.
Right.
All of these lend themselves towards a single channel,
Right.
multi-output system.
And just to focus on compliance for the moment. I mean, we've talked about social media and how, if you get an embarrassing glitch, a price point which is just ludicrously low, and these things can go viral and with the financial and reputational implications. But there are real legal requirements that companies have in terms of things like sale and clearance, and we've seen some high profile cases in the media of retailers getting that wrong. I mean, there are rules, aren't there, for if you're going to discount something. I mean, and presumably those be programmed in. I mean, is your system just going to alert, or does it prevent? I mean, I guess this is the question.
It's configurable. Actually, one good point on what you just said. Here again, if you had 4 channels and there was a compliance requirement, you are reinventing that compliance requirement down 4 channels and trying to maintain that compliance down each of those channels, because, as I say, they are different suppliers. Let me take sales or sale. There are 2 levels of compliance. One is simply in the look and feel of the ticket. If your legal text is too small, then it's non-compliant. If the percentage size of your APR...
There's a rule on the side.
Absolutely. Okay. If the percentage size of your APR on your credit is not the correct percentage compared to the rest of that is non-compliant. So that is actual, absolute physical.
Yeah.
And these are things we've learned over 20 years. So we build those into our system and we build those into our designs. At the other end of the spectrum is, as you said, sales and savings. You cannot show a savings on a product unless that product has been available in your business for 21 days. You cannot show a sale unless a certain percentage of your stock is in sale. Okay. Now those are Office of Fair Trading requirements.
Right.
In order to avoid trouble with the OFT, we build these compliance regulations into the system itself. We do so for ticketing, and as a consequence, that same set of logic which we build into one module is available to all the modules that you may deliver using M3, RxM3. So you fix it once, and it's applicable across your signage, your ESLs, your large format print, all of that. Okay. And to answer your question on whether it is configurable or not, yes, it is. So there are 2 ways of dealing with it. One of our clients at the moment basically says, if it is not compliant, don't show it. Another way might be able to say, well, if it is not compliant, show me that it isn't compliant, and I'll make a conscious decision on that. I think most large retailers will go for the former.
Yes. Let's not risk the reputational issues, or just looking being caught in an embarrassing situation, and of course, again, the trust. I keep coming back to trust, but it's something that's very close to my heart. I think there's a lot of mistrust at the moment, particularly amongst customers in the bigger retails. I mean, rip off Britain is a continual trope that the media like to latch onto. So anything like this can often be held up as an example of this and back up people's sort of prejudices. So it's I think all this is very important. And I suppose what it comes down to is what you're actually saying is this is something that you can leverage the data. I mean, you all the investment of time and effort in terms of things like, I guess you would call them business rules, the rules of behaviour that check all these compliances. Once you've embedded them here at the beginning of the pipeline, you've got the high confidence that you don't have any more worries in store. I mean, does that have any implications in terms of this? I'm keen now to come back out to the store and go back to the customer experience. Does this have implications for the customer experience above and beyond just those kind of slightly nebulous things that we've been talking about in terms of overall trust? Because customers come to trust all that. I mean, I'm always banging on about customer service. The number one job of a sales assistant is to be there with the customers. In using this system, are there any kind of benefits that accrue to the actual store and that have implications for the customer experience?
I think so. If we look at this down one channel and then we multiply it across all the channels, we worked with a client on the customer journey, trying to make it possible for customers to go into store and understand and have a coherent conversation or a coherent narrative on how to buy, how they make their purchase decisions. We'll use the same colours across all categories. We'll use the same graphical content across all categories, the same messaging, the same identifying of categories using colour coding. All of these things we will use exactly the same. So if you are going in to buy a laptop or an HDMI cable or white goods, a big white goods product,
Yep.
you can use the same formula in order to make your decision. Now that's good for both the customers who come into store as well as the people who are assisting the customers with the sale. They have a similar narrative. Huge amounts, retailers spend huge amounts of money and research into finalising what this customer journey needs to be.
Right.
Now, if you're doing that down a single channel, which is simply and only your tickets printed in store, the ability to use all that learning across all 5 channels, you see where I am going,
I see exactly where you're going.
is enormous.
It is, in a way, I mean, what we're talking about here is quite a profound return on investment, because we all know the stories of of a retailer who will spend a fortune on sending people in to interview customers, and nothing gets done with that information, or they can't actually act on that information. And I think what you're saying is that by having everything under a lot more of control, any learnings you gather from those studying and caring for customers at a very low level, you can map that very, very quickly across the whole of the estate, in different stores and things,
including the internet.
Wow.
So what you're doing is you have the same narrative across your whole retail estate,
Yeah.
whether that's online or whether that's in store. I think it is a powerful thing to do, and all retailers I have spoken to are very, very interested in having this similar narrative.
No, okay, I can understand that. Well, I mean, for me, the big message from our conversation here, apart from we talked about the importance of that kind of information, but we've gone down right to the core of the data, but we've also come right out into the most important and the most fundamental of retail success, which is the customer experience. And it's fantastic to hear about RxM3. I wish you all the best with the system, and I appreciate the chance to talk through some of those issues with you. And one of the things that we like to do in these interviews is to end up by going back to shops, and we're obviously big fans of physical retail. Are there any kind of experiences, shops that you want to give a shout out to? Something in your life where you've experienced really good customer service that you kind of that sticks with you.
Good Lord. So I could alienate some very
You're not allowed to mention anybody that you work for.
It must have been 10 years ago when we were in Australia, and I still remember, and we still talk about this experience actually. We went into a little clothes retailer in Brisbane. Young member of staff came up to us, absolutely attentive. You could see their great desire was for us to walk out with things that we would always want and always love. And it worked incredibly hard on what I've imagined was very small margins to make certain that happened. That stayed with me ever since.
Right.
I sincerely believe that using technology to deliver quality information and allowing the people in store to give each client that sort of attention and be that attentive and that motivated into finding what is best for that client, is the thing that's going to maintain bricks and mortar retailing.
I think we all know those kind of experiences. Those are the things that we, as you say, this is an experience that happened to you that you're still talking about 10 years later. And I think you can't get away from those kind of experiences, because those are the experiences that generate word of mouth, and word of mouth actually is the only marketing worth its salt at the end of the day. But Steve Reed, thank you very much.
Thank you.